Gods and students. Celestia stood in the main entrance to the shuttle, waiting as they docked back with her flagship. Communications with the flagship had been limited while in transit, but what messages she could relay were more than enough to prepare the way before them. All that remained was to gauge the next steps of the crusade, and how the Lion would serve in the conditions of the new Imperium. As they had gotten past thinly veiled challenges, Celestia's optimism was higher than normal. She did not turn as the Lion and his entourage stepped up behind her. She could feel discomfort positively radiating from the group, no doubt from the ever-analytical Primarch preparing for whatever threats awaited them. "This is another test, is it not?" the Lion said. "Only if you choose to make it such," Celestia replied. "I do not wish to repeat the mistakes of old, Johnson. If you feel doubts or concerns about my presentation, do not allow them to fester as they had before the heresy. I am most likely not the one who needs to hear such words, but I understand." His tone indicated everything but Celestia fell silent again as the door before her swung open. A collection of custodes awaited her, their gaze unbroken as Celestia, the Lion, and the Dark Angels stepped aboard. "Welcome back, Empress," the leader of the custodes said. "Lord Corax and Lady Terra are awaiting you in the command room, per your orders." "Good." Celestia nodded. "Send word to all forces not currently committed to pacification of Caesarea to prepare for warp transit. Further orders will be forthcoming." The custodes nodded, disappearing into the group while the others led Celestia and her group onward. "Who is this Terra you speak of?" the Lion asked from behind Celestia. "A student, for lack of a better term," Celestia replied. "She has accompanied me on my journeys since my resurrection, and has proven to be quite adept at understanding the mechanics and strengths of the Imperium. With all due respect, I do not see the benefit of bringing a child into these discussions, no matter how adept they may be. Sometimes it takes a child's perspective to win a war," Celestia countered. The Lion said nothing, but Celestia could feel that he was unconvinced. In time, she thought, so Twilight may show the Imperium all she is capable of. Their walk passed in silence, Celestia keeping her eyes forward while the Dark Angels took in the situation around them. She allowed herself a bit of freedom, reaching out to touch the minds of those aboard the ship. A general wave of relief had passed now that she had returned to the battleship, though lingering thoughts of dread would still remain, as they always did. She recalled her soul, turning her thoughts inward as she worked out the next steps in her mission. The command room was situated just below the main bridge, a large room dominated by computers and maps projecting the Imperium and beyond. The custodes fanned out as Celestia and the Dark Angels entered the room, Primarch and Empress crossing quickly to the main display. Corax stood off to her right, the shadows clinging to him even in the light of the display, while Twilight and Inquisitor Mashes stood more or less in front of her, Twilight giving Celestia a warm smile as she entered. "It's so good to see you've returned safely, Empress," Twilight said as Celestia approached. "The pleasure is all mine," Celestia said before stepping slightly to the side to draw attention to the Lion. "I present before the generals of this crusade and the Imperium Lion L. Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels. Let it be known by all present that he possesses the same power and authority as I in all matters I cannot attend to, as with Lord Corax." "So, you are the Empress student?" Johnson said, ignoring Celestia for a moment as he focused on Twilight. For her part the younger woman did not budge, though her smile did drop away for mere friendly professionalism. "My name is Terra," she said, giving a respectful nod. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you in person, Lord Johnson." The Lion regarded Twilight for a few moments before he gave a short grunt, turning his attention now to Corax. "My sources had thought you dead, Corax," he said. "I am surprised it took you this long to resurface again." "We all have our reasons for remaining in the shadows," Corax replied, his face neutral. A potential barb if there was ever, but Johnson did not seem willing to rise to the bait just yet. Celestia seized on the opportunity to begin the discussion of their plans, if nothing more than to keep the Primarches focused on the Imperium and not on potential bickering. "With the arrival of the Dark Angels, the path for our crusade has branched considerably." Celestia moved so she could see all parties around the display. "Our enemies remain around us, but now we truly have the strength to strike them. The question that I present to you is where we make our next thrust. The northern and southern borders are practically unguarded, the lion said after a brief scan of the map. And if your general press towards the east is telling of your intended grand strategy, it may yet pull more forces away from such positions as you march for Ultramar. Fortunately, simple delegation should be more than enough to shore up our lines before your power is gathered, and fortunately there is now enough of our number for such delegation to be completed. For that, the Dark Angels will secure your flanks while you prepare for your next advance. Wouldn't it make more sense to not split up our forces so soon after your return? Twilight offered, but the Primarch ignored her. My sons were diligent enough to assemble 14,000 of their number to my banner, with supporting forces that eclipse even their host. No doubt more remain from Guilliman's meddling, but that is merely a matter of logistics. The First Legion will be more than ample at turning back the decay that appears to be standard among the Imperium in this age. The lion cast a glance over to Twilight, Celestia noting the young woman's look of displeasure. I am glad to see that we have gotten these pleasantries out of the way. I go now to assume my command. I do not believe the Empress called us here merely to declare you War Master, Johnson. Corax said, folding his arms across his chest. Or have you forgotten the last time one of our number took power based on mere assumptions? Guilliman was easy to correct, especially once Sanguinius arrived and the warp cleared. Johnson replied. And I did not ask for the position, but given the circumstances and the forces we possess, it is only logical that we separate to cover the most ground. But you've only been here for, what, a few weeks? And when you arrived you threatened to kill us all. Twilight started. That doesn't really instill confidence in those you are looking to lead. Again, Johnson ignored Twilight, though Celestia could see annoyance cross his features. The only thing that matters now is that we do not lose the momentum of your victory here, he said. So do we waste our time arguing, or do we take action and begin to move against the enemies of mankind? No offense, but maybe you're just rushing into this a little too quickly. Twilight spoke again. 1 minute you're here, next minute you're not. It really doesn't add a whole lot to unity of the crusade if we operate like that. We're trying to unite the Imperium once again, and as much as it might seem contrary, we'll do much better as a team rather than going off on our own. Do not think I've come only to sow dissension, student, Johnson said, his composure finally breaking enough for him to glare at Twilight. I speak merely on my tactical and strategic assessment of the situation before us, nothing more. Or do you have an alternate solution that doesn't risk drawing away forces from front where greenskins, chaos, and other threats can assault at their pleasure? Silence. Celestia called, drawing all attention back to her. Terra is right that unity among us all will do better for the Imperium. Bickering over grand strategy will only delay our eventual action. She then looked to the lion. But your comments are not unwarranted. The force we possess here is by no means weak, but as more troops are called under my direct control, it will mean other sectors of the Imperium will be left wanting. Celestia moved away from the table, keeping her back to the others. I still intend to make for Ultramar, as the scions of Guilliman will only bolster our strength further, but the Imperium at large still needs our help. Even with my power, I am still one person hoping to regain the loyalty of an entire galaxy. A pause before Celestia turned back. I had it in my mind to branch the crusade, myself leading the main force while others take on the task of securing the rest of the Imperium. With the arrival of the Dark Angels, I finally have the leadership necessary to do so. The question though is which of you two will be leading the charge. Both Primarches cast a glance to one another. Is this doubt I sense between you? She asked. I would not classify it solely as doubt, Empress. Corax started. For my own part, there is some trepidation as to the last time you entrusted such responsibilities to one man. Come now, Corax, this is far from the follies of the Great Crusade. Johnson countered. By Corax's frown, that was not what the Lord of the Raven Guard meant. That being said, there is little time to dawdle on the decision. Whom do you name to lead your armies? Celestia paused again. There was a tremor just beyond her field of perception, causing her to draw her hand to her forehead. She turned away for a moment, just long enough to clear her mind and think of her next words. In truth, I have not decided yet. Celestia said finally. The Lion's forces are more complete, but Corax has served the longest at my side during the crusade and is thus familiar with the soldiers under my command. Both of you would make fine commanders for the second branch of the crusade. I do not doubt Corax's skills, the Lion said. A master tactician and fine warrior, to be sure. But lurking in the shadows and striking against weak foes is not the message that we must send to our enemies. We must be more aggressive, truly taking the fight to our enemies to ensure mankind's dominance among the stars. Give me a few days, and I will have a strategy planned for your second front. Johnson looked back at the map. The Maelstrom, for instance, is a reasonable target, and it would draw in the sons of Jagatai for our cause as well. If of course they listen to you when you drop out of the blue with a massive battle fleet, Twilight said. Johnson's mood seemed to sour again. I am many things, student, but stupid is not one of them. Of course the forces around the Maelstrom will be contacted first. It is a basic practice to ensure that you have full support before starting a campaign. He looked to Twilight. Are you afraid that I might offend the delicate sensibilities of the White Scars? No, but even with the authority of a Primarch you need to work to make sure that other soldiers are going to listen to you. Twilight countered. Half the problems with this place is that no one really cares to listen to one another and work together. Something which apparently hasn't been fixed in almost 15,000 years. If we can have a plan where we're all working towards a known goal instead of just jumping into fights at random, then the crusade will go much better and we wouldn't have to worry about butting heads all the time. I do not need to take lessons in military strategy from a child, the Lion snapped, Twilight drawing away as the Primarch looked to Celestia. Apologies, Empress. I merely wish to see this crusade brought to a successful and swift conclusion. I understand your passion, Johnson. Celestia frowned. Though it does seem that our circumstances have worn down some of our composure, has it not? I will take all of your suggestions into account as I plan the next stage of the campaign. Understandable. Johnson drew back. I shall return to the rock to await your decision. Corax, he gave the Primarch of the Raven Guard a curt nod, brushing past Twilight again on his way out. Celestia waited for the Lion to depart before speaking again. Terra, I will speak with you later on a few matters. For now, I would like to speak with Corax alone. As you wish, Empress. Twilight's worry was palpable, but a few quick words and some reassurance would do her well, in time. As Twilight and Mashes exited, Celestia turned her attention now to Corax. I see the Lion has changed little since the crusade, he said finally. A bit more confrontational, but this is a new environment for him. Celestia rested her palms against the display. In time, he will turn such confrontation into purpose, and the Dark Angels will supplement the rest of the crusade nicely. You don't intend on turning him loose, as he suggested. As I said, in time. Celestia looked back up to Corax. It is not just for my benefit to have Johnson on a short leash, Corax. I failed you and the others by not saying more of what I had planned for the Imperium, leaving doubts in their minds as to if I was truly acting in the best interests of mankind. I shall not make that same mistake again. I realize that, but do the rest of your subordinates realize that? Corax asked. For all our sakes, I hope so. Celestia paused again as the tremor returned. Corax cocked his head to one side before speaking again. More trouble, he asked. You were not exactly subtle the first time you felt a disturbance. And fortunately none of you mentioned it. Celestia replied. I do not know what it is. The Chaos Gods rearing their heads to taunt me? Interference from the hive mind? Something worse? I can decipher what it is with a little time and focus. But the Lion was not wrong when saying that time is a resource we are in short supply of. Perhaps Terra might be of some assistance. Corax offered. The girl has quite a gift for insight, even if her naivete holds her back. Perhaps, Celestia pondered the thought. It would give Twilight a chance to expand her powers, perhaps acclimate to the process of divination through the warp, and perhaps give Twilight a chance to open up a little more about recent developments. Why not? I have time as I plan out the campaign, and Terra could always use more counseling. She looked to one custodes that stood guard. Please bring Lady Terra back in. The custodes said nothing, turning towards the door and stepping outside. It was not long before he returned, straightening up before speaking. "Lady Tara is not in the hall," the custodes said. "Those guarding the door said she and the Inquisitor were called away on urgent business." The tremor returned, and Celestia understood. Rebecca made her way down the hall, eyes darting from room to room as she searched for her quarry. She assumed that they would be within the mess hall, as usual when they were not in the training room or under order, but the Inquisitor's henchmen were proving to be more difficult to find than she had anticipated. "Perhaps you should wait until Lord Mashes and Lady Tara return," Veronica offered from behind her. "Then, when we are all together, you can settle this without much effort." "I had thought of that, but I don't know, it feels improper." Rebecca shook her head. "Tara would understand, but I do not feel the need to bring the Inquisitor himself into the discussion. Much in the same way Sister Naomi doesn't trust him." "It's not mistrust," Rebecca shook her head. "Just impropriety." Veronica didn't say anything, but Rebecca knew her sister well enough to sense she was not convinced. "Still, I suppose it would be better than trying to explain this to Judith or Ruth." Finally the two sisters reached their destination, stepping into the mess hall and looking for their quarry. They did not have to look far. The blue greatcoats of the Valhallans stood out among the drab uniforms and armor of the standard imperial military. Sister Bianca and the Psyker were also there, the Valhallans chatting with the Hospitaller as the latter kept a restraining hand on Angelique. Rebecca took a deep breath before starting towards them, Veronica in tow. "Oh, Sister Rebecca," Bianca called to them as they approached. "What a pleasant surprise, we do not see you very much in this part of the ship." "It never really came up in our wanderings," Rebecca said. "And with the Inquisitor coming to and fro, I suppose we never had a chance to interact beyond training sessions." "Well, seeing as Lord Mashes and Lady Tara are preoccupied, you are always welcome to join us," said one of the Valhallans, Alexis if Rebecca remembered correctly. Rebecca nodded her thanks as she and Veronica took their seats at the table, the Valhallans pulling away some half-eaten food to give the sisters more room. "5 petals descend from the flower," Angelique mumbled. "The light vanishes and the mare is left to call through the void." "We understand, Angelique," Bianca said, gently stroking the Psyker's back. "But we are safe here, for now. No need to worry about such drastic times. The pillar stands above the flower, bathing with shadow and light." Angelique replied. "Do you understand what she's saying?" Rebecca asked. "Not always," Bianca said with a sigh. "But there are moments when I think maybe, just for a minute, she might speak plainly again." "She only really does that when she's telling you how you're going to die," Alexis added, drawing a glare from Bianca and Nikolai. "What? It's true. The flower wilts from time and age, with no mare to snip the buds away," Angelique said, looking toward Rebecca. "Do you step forward to guide the little lights?" I think so." Rebecca shuffled in her seat a little. "That is why I came to seek you out, Sister Bianca." "Oh?" Bianca asked. "Considering taking up the vows of a Hospitaller?" "Well, not exactly," Veronica shook her head. "I do feel I can assist in such matters, but I am still drawn to my squad and my sisters. They have been like family to me. In more ways than one," Veronica added. "And while I would love to take the vow of a Hospitaller, I could not leave them entirely to pursue such actions." "I understand completely." Bianca nodded. "It was difficult for me leaving behind many of my connections to the Argent Shroud, and there were times when those connections almost drew me away from the path of Hospitaller." She smiled before continuing. "But if you are still willing to learn, there are several healing techniques I can teach you to help you along the way, and I'm sure you should have no trouble procuring some medical supplies for the future." "Oh, thank you." Rebecca nodded. "It really means a lot to me to have this opportunity, sister. But of course." Bianca looked to Veronica. "And you? Do you wish to learn a little healing to aid your sister?" "Healing is not really my area of focus when it comes to service beyond battle," Veronica replied. "I am perfectly fine with what little I know for now." Nikolai shifted slightly, drawing Rebecca's attention. "Is something the matter?" she asked. "Nothing, truly." Alexis started. Just, a number of the men we served along before coming into Lord Mash's services thought much the same, they didn't live long enough to change their minds. I lost several sisters in much the same way. Bianca said, lowering her head. All the more reason why I became a hospitaller. A silence fell over the table, sisters and Valhallans not willing to talk as old memories returned. Finally the silence was broken by Rebecca speaking. Well, I suppose I have much to learn, she said. I promise you all, I will not let you down. I have no doubts. Bianca said. A whimper from Angelique drew the attention of those at the table. I suppose Angelique is as good a patient as any to practice on. If you are to serve as my apprentice, you must learn to read her and her moods to best direct and comfort her when I am unable, not just setting bones and stitching wounds. The flower brushes but does not see, for the mare's truth is great. Angelique mumbled. Hope you have a head for prophecy too. Alexis said as Rebecca pulled closer. It grows on you, but it's not like her chirping phase. Chirping phase? Veronica asked. Apparently Angelique went through a phase where she communicated in chirps, before she became my charge. Bianca said. Did you once tell me you tried to pass her off as a noblewoman during that time? Alexis pulled away, tugging at his collar slightly. I'll let you two discuss Angelique for now. Bianca rolled her eyes as she and Rebecca focused on Angelique. She seems fragile, scared. Rebecca thought. How am I supposed to reach her if she barely knows who I am? Angelique, can you hear me? Rebecca started, reaching a hand towards the psyker. I'm going to be helping you with Sister Bianca. Would you like that? A vine creeps up the side of the pillar. Angelique said, turning her attention to Rebecca. A second petal, fluttering under the wings of the mare. Petals guide the lost, do they not? You're making a connection, good. Bianca said. Be gentle, though. Too much stimuli may cause her to react adversely. She won't lash out, will she? Rebecca asked. I don't want either of us to get hurt. Angelique's talents lie in divination rather than brute strength. But should things get out of hand, I will be here to help. Bianca gave a small nod towards Angelique. Go on. You are doing well. Rebecca swallowed before reaching out to Angelique. Angelique, tell me a little more about the mare, Rebecca offered. The mare watches, the mare was broken, Angelique gave a small smile. But the eye and the flower brought the mare back. All is well and the mare strikes with the light. Rebecca allowed herself a smile as well. Reaching out to Angelique still made little sense, but now she felt she could see what Bianca saw, a young woman trying to make sense of the world, shattered as her vision was. Perhaps this was what Tara saw when she reached out to others. Rebecca's hand brushed gently against Angelique's before the psyker pulled back, her face contorting with worry. No, Angelique said. No. Did I do something wrong? Rebecca asked, snapping her vision towards Bianca. I had only meant to comfort her. This isn't you, Bianca said, her face growing stony. This is something more. Nikolai, go and find Lord Mash's. The Valhallan said nothing as he pushed away from the table and stood. I'll go with you, Veronica said, rising as Angelique cried out in fear. They come through the void, she said, tears forming at the edge of her vision. They come as one, and yet swarm like the tide. I can hear them, thousands of them calling for me, shrieking as the darkness covers all. The light is blind, the mare is lost, the raven stands alone with the darkness. Angelique, it's okay, Bianca moved over the psyker, steadying her with her hands. The visions mean nothing. Think of what Lady Tara said, let your mind clear and let them pass. This did little to placate Angelique. They are coming, she cried. The great devourer rises from the depths to strike the light. The mare and the lion stand, but the darkness claims all. Light fails and the raven is blinded, and the spark is cast among the waves. She struggled free of Bianca, curling up into a ball as the Hospitaller and Rebecca tried to calm her. The Tyranids are coming. The Tyranids are coming.